Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am so excited, y'all, that we have a very special guest today. I am Daniel Aaron, and this is the Art of Vibrant Living. And I'm so pleased to be able to introduce y'all to and have the chance to talk in a educational and fun way with Jennifer Moore, whom I first met, well, over a decade ago when I was back in Bali running yoga teacher trainings, and we were doing a specialty training, and we wanted to do something that included yoga for pregnancy and prenatal yoga. And so we did some research and we found, oh, well, there's clearly one woman who is at the top of that world. And so, I was immediately just amazed by and impressed by her knowledge and experience in that realm, both from a really solid yoga perspective and also from work as a hypnotherapist and as a doula, and just an amazing amount of knowledge. Though even better was when I got to feel her heart and her caring and how generous she is with students, with it, and with everybody. And so that's a little bit of Jen's background, though, and we're going to go into some more, though. What she's doing, some amazing work these days that really goes way beyond yoga, beyond prenatal vinyasa yoga, and is tapping into some, global issues that are affecting all of us that have to do with the sanctity of life and how we are all living on the planet. And if that sounds like a lot and really big, then I haven't scratched the surface of it. So enough said for the moment, though. Jen, thank you for, coming on and us getting the chance to talk.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so, I gave people a quick overview in terms of your, who you are. What would you fill in, and what would you add, and what would you say about why you're doing this work? It's specialty stuff and important, and I know you have a soulful connection to it.
Yeah, well, a little background for me. I started teaching yoga, 25 years ago or so, and loved it, was really into the dynamic yoga, and then got pregnant 4 years later after starting to teach. And back then, there was really not a lot of prenatal yoga that was dynamic. It was all really gentle. There was a lot of fear, actually, in the world of pregnancy, and especially with exercise. Now, fast forward 20 years, and the world has embraced not only prenatal yoga, but prenatal exercise in a way that we couldn't even fathom back then. Really embraced it in not just yoga, but, moderate exercise every day for pregnant women. So, but back then there really wasn't any yoga that I wanted to do. So I did it at home. I did my own practice, and, everyone said, you can't do downward dog, you can't do twists. And I thought, these feel really good, and I'm going to do them unless you can give me a really good reason not to, So I started to kind of investigate and see, why can't I do these things? And I saw the fear. I saw that there was a lot of fear around it. So, being a hypnotherapist, I also was a Reiki master back then, and a yoga teacher. So, I was pregnant, and I was thinking to myself, I got this. Right? This is going to be easy for me. Childbirth is nothing. I've got all these tools, right? And what ended up happening changed my life. Really, I can pinpoint my shift in knowing what I was going to do to one moment, and it was during my labor. I was induced. So for anyone who knows about induction with birth, being induced can be a little more intense, a little bit longer. You have your labor started for you. It doesn't start naturally. So I ended up having about 36 hours of labor, pushing for 3 hours. And all the tools that I thought, okay, if I can have water, I'm going to be fine. And that was taken away. Okay, if I can just not have an IV and not be hooked up to anything, I'll be fine. And that was taken away. It's like everything that all of the coping mechanisms that I had, thought that I had kind of were not there. And then I also realized during the labor that there were so many things that I could imagine having practiced that would have helped me so much if I had practiced them. You know, it's one thing to know relaxation and to know how to do, you know, different techniques, but until we get them into our bodies in a really solid way in preparation for a specific thing, you know, doesn't really help, right? You can say, oh, all you have to do to get better is meditate for 30 minutes a day. But if you don't have a regular practice of that specific kind of meditation, it's not going to work for you. So, so I remember that it was the hardest thing I ever did. And I didn't want to have any pain medication. I didn't want to have any drugs. And, you know, you know, Daniel's looked at my chart and you know that I am Aries sun and moon. You know, no one's going to tell me I can't do something. So, so they tell me, you know, you can't, you know, you're not going to be able to handle this if you don't have drugs because you're being induced. And I thought, yeah, now there's no way I'm getting drugs. so I really think that I didn't get drugs for that reason, because someone told me I couldn't, because it was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I remember being 7 centimeters dilated. I will never forget this. I'm sitting in a rocking chair and I thought to myself, I know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to help women prepare for and get through this moment. And it was really profound, and I'll never forget that. And, you know, then the rest, you know, the last 4 hours of my labor happened. It was really intense. And ever since then, it was like there was no question, this is what I'm going to do. And then that kind of transformed over time, because at first it was just, I'm going to help women with hypnosis. I'm going to help them prepare. And then I realized that there's this physical component that's missing. Women are not strong anymore. We're, you know, especially back then, and even now in places like China and South America, women who are pregnant are taught, oh, you need to just rest as much as you can, you know, and don't move too much. Don't raise your arms over your head. You know, I'm hearing these things and I'm thinking, do they know what labor is? Because labor is like running several marathons. And if you're going to spend 9 months before you run those marathons, relaxing and resting up for it, that marathon is going to be really, really difficult, right? So we need to train women. We need to train them as though they're running marathons. They need to be not only mentally prepared for this experience, but also physically prepared. Because what's happening is that in the birth world, birth has become a trauma. It's become something that traumatizes women, that they have PTSD from. I mean, it's become this experience of victimization, being, you know, people talk about how they go into the hospital and their clothes are taken away and they're told they have to do these things. And they're told that if they don't do them, then something will happen with their baby, or, you know, they're not. And so it becomes, you're a victim not only to your body, but to this, this hospital and to the doctors. And women actually give that, you know, they're giving themselves as a victim because they're so just kind of, well, I trust the doctor. I didn't go to medical school, you know, so the doctor knows best. And really not trusting that their bodies know best, that they know best, that intuitively we know how to give birth and no one has to tell us how to do that. But we do need to prepare our bodies and we do need to prepare our minds. And if we can do that, and then we can turn birth from a trauma to a really ecstatic experience, to something that is not only bearable, but pleasurable, enjoyable. I mean, imagine if we grew up as women hearing like, oh, you're going to love your birth. Oh, it's so amazing. It's going to be so wonderful. And thinking that and expecting that, you know, there's this idea, sorry, I'm just going to keep going.
That's great. I love what you're saying. I'm with you.
There's this idea of expectation, right? I was recently filming a documentary about pain. And I was interviewing people like people from the Heart Math Institute, and I was interviewing this man named Sean Mackey, and he's the Stanford Hospital director of the pain clinic. And they're doing this amazing work there. The work that they're doing is about how our minds and how what we think about affects outcomes and pain levels. Because right now, we have this opioid crisis, right, where people are addicted, and they're trying to find other ways that they can get people out of pain that are actually even more effective than all these drugs. And so they're studying the mind, and they're studying how can our thoughts actually control our pain. And they're having amazing results. And they have a couple of things that they've identified. One thing is that expectation plays a big role. So people tend to expect, a certain outcome, and those outcomes are much more likely to happen. And there's a range from people expecting really great outcomes to people who are doing what they call catastrophizing, right? Which is this word that they kind of coined, which is basically going to worst case scenario all the time, right? Which is, and that is, I'm going to have this surgery and I'm never going to be able to walk again, or I'm going to die, and that's kind of, those people who are catastrophizing have the worst outcomes. And so we have this, and so they've done these studies, and then they do these amazing studies where they actually are measuring pain levels, and then measuring the thoughts with pain levels and seeing how the thoughts can control pain. So they put people in this functional MRI machine. And so it's like video instead of just pictures, right? And so they noticed that pain is really different from all other senses. So when you are smelling something, part of your brain lights up, right? When you're seeing something, part of your brain lights up. When you're having pain, all different places in your brain are lighting up. And so it's not, what they've identified is that pain is not just a sensation. It's a sensation plus an emotion. And that's the reason that pain is so subjective, that we can't just say, well, what is pain? Well, pain is just, a burning sensation, or it's a stabbing sensation, because it's not just a sensation. It's a sensation plus an emotion. And so what they did by using that functional MRI is they saw that that when you change the thoughts, when you change what people are thinking about, that's going to change what's happening in the brain and the perception of pain. So they would actually create pain for people. They put these patches on them to create, that were really hot and create pain. And then they'd have them think about gratitude, something in their life they're grateful for, someone they love. Or they would have someone, focus on an image and try to change the image with their mind. And, all of these things, and the studies were amazing. They were able to reduce people's pain as much or more than narcotic medication did.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I kind of went off on a tangent, but these are kind of the things I'm excited about is really teaching people that we have so much more control over the experiences we have, and that our thoughts and what we do to prepare our practice. We talk about in yoga, practice, not doing yoga, we're practicing yoga, and our practice of things like breath work, things like meditation, things like yoga, things like just being in the moment, things like gratitude, and as much as we can, trying to focus on positive sensations in our lives and in our bodies. Those things as a practice are huge in determining how people will respond to the birth experience.
Yeah. Well, it's too bad that you're not able to muster some passion for this topic and what you're in. I love all that you said, and it sparked about 42,000 questions for me and comments. So a couple quick things. One, catastrophizing, you'll appreciate this, as will many of our viewers, no doubt. The meaning of the word catastrophe, if you break it down, being friends of astrology as we are, it means to go against the stars, just like disaster, right? So in some way it's saying when we are not in tune with the natural cycles as exemplified by the planets and stars, that's when we have catastrophe. And
Wow.
I'm with you. A lot of what I've been sharing with the folks in my membership and teaching about lately is just how dangerous and destructive is the thought feeling cycle that's so easy to get into, and that it takes a specific practice and a distance from the pain, at least for a period every day. The pain or the negative thoughts or the issues or the anxiety or the fear or the sadness, whatever the negative emotion is in our life. And when we're in it, of course, it's just creating all this cortisol and stress that keeps us, with those feelings and hormones producing those thoughts. And it takes action, it takes practice to get out of that, as well as education. And I love,
Absolutely. And
good.
cortisol, just a little side note about it. We understand physiologically what cortisol does. It creates that fight or flight, and that fight or flight response, just a kind of an aside, is that the fight or flight response actually takes energy away from the reproductive system first. Like, one of the first places that it takes away from is the reproductive system, because if somebody is in danger and they're in labor, their labor will stop. Or if someone is in a place where they're not safe, they're not going to get pregnant, because that energy, is taken away from that area. So.
Yeah, well, then that's great that you say that, because one of the things that I've been really into and sharing a lot about lately is how when we are in the emotions of stress, whatever they are, and that cortisol level is rising up, it's also not a time to be creating or envisioning our life, or, so not reproductive zones and not any creative zones. That's really like survival. And so much of the world right now is in a survival mode and afraid of what's going on. And I share a lot about, as you know, about breath and its component in birth, and how the birthing process makes a very strong impact on the way we breathe for the rest of our lives, unless until we get conscious of those patterns that were set there. And I love that you're talking about heart math, and they're just doing such amazing work there. And I want to talk about the concept of emergence there, as will relate to what you're talking about. Though before I get to that, I'm so excited, so many questions. I have a lot to share on this, so I really want to hear from you here now about what is the impact of the birth process for the rest of somebody's life. I don't mean this in any minimizing way, though. Well, what difference does it make?
Sure. I mean, that's a good question. We can't really know the answer to it. I can intuitively tell you my opinion on it. I feel like the energy that we come into this world with makes a difference in our evolution as people, in our relationships. And I think this is one of the things that I've actually seen, is that when a woman has a really traumatic experience in birth, she is going to create this relationship with this child. That birth of that child is responsible for this trauma that she has, right? And so even if it's not on a conscious level, I feel as though it's really important that we do healing around that trauma, so that there isn't that strain on the relationship between the mom and the child. And there's a lot of people experiencing postpartum depression right now, and anxiety, and those hormones that, the cortisol, those kinds of things, all those hormones are connecting with the baby as well. there is such a huge connection. I don't think people realize how big a connection moms and babies have in the first months after the baby is born. The mom and baby might not be physically connected anymore, but there is still a really big connection happening, a really big symbiotic relationship. For example, if the baby is skin to skin on the mom and the baby gets cold, the mom's body temperature, core body temperature, will raise to warm the baby up, or lower if it needs to. So there is this not even like something emotional. It's actually a physical connection between mom and baby that is still there. And if she is in a state of depression because of a birth experience, that energy is going to go to that relationship in that time, right after the mom and baby are born. Also, when a woman is experiencing the really positive birth hormones, like oxytocin, which is the love hormone, right? It's also the hormone that contracts the uterus. The endorphins and the beta endorphins and the oxytocin levels get really, really, really high during birth. And those also can go to the baby. They help with pain. So the baby, when it's going through the birth canal, they help with pain with that. They help with pain right afterwards from the experience of the birth. In breastfeeding, they go into the breast milk and they help the baby like morphine, so that the baby doesn't have to experience the pain from that, kind of an anesthesia feeling from that. And so the hormone levels, the oxytocin level in the mom and the baby are at the highest they're ever going to be in the moments, in the hour after birth. And that is happening for a reason, because oxytocin not only is what contracts the uterus, but it is the hormone of love. It's the hormone that, we experience when we hug someone and we're feeling that, that huge surge of love and energy, right? And so, nature created the birth experience to be this extremely high levels of oxytocin in mom and baby, so that right after the baby is born, it's the perfect environment for them to fall in love.
Yeah.
So when we take that away, when we add the cortisol and the fight or flight, and we add the fear and the trauma, we are taking away some of that. Even sometimes with people talking about like epidurals and pain medication, and I'm not against those things. I definitely think that there's a place for them. I think they're overused, and people aren't prepared. So, but even when we do some of those things, some of that is going to be taken away as well. So, the potential for birth to be an ecstatic experience, one where mom and baby are at such high levels of oxytocin and endorphins and beta endorphins, and they're just falling in love in that first hour after birth. What kind of impact that's going to have long term, in my mind, is huge.
I'm with you. Yeah, really well said. And one way of looking at life on Earth, and why we have all decided as these infinite spirits to come here in human form, is that we're meant to experience love and joy and connection between each other, and that of all times in history, we are most disconnected from that right now, and most disconnected from the earth itself. So, oxytocin is also called the hormone of bonding, right? Yeah. And that first part of birth is where mother and child, and even father can be mixed in there too, are getting the healthy attachment that forms our basis for how we view the world and all the creatures in it. And the concept of emergence that I mentioned earlier, one of the things they're studying at HeartMath right now is emergence just simply means when there is a movement and creatures are going in synchrony without a clear leader, like when birds are flying in the sky together, or fish in the ocean moving together, right? That's the concept of emergence. And this is those of us that are trusting and believing and investing ourselves in positive evolution of our world right now are saying, we have that potential for emergence. And part of my excitement wanting to talk with you about this and share with more people is the more, and we know everything is connected, right? That everything in the world is connected in every moment. So the more beings who are being born in this ecstatic, natural way, forming healthy attachment, and viewing the world as not only safe, but viewing it as, something wonderful and beautiful, then obviously the more we are creating that in the world. And I'm with you. I'm also not against medical assistance or pharmaceuticals or intervention when appropriate. And we've also come to a time, and I'm going to toss this out, and a lot more than me. We've come to a time though when it's gotten so common to schedule a C-section. Well, I'm going to have tennis on Thursday, so I want to get my C-section, and then I'm available. In one segment of culture, but then you've tapped into a big part of the world, and I saw this a lot in Indonesia, and I know it's happening in China too, where it's just becomes such a convenience for doctors and the medical system and the financial generation of that industry to just say, well, no, we have to just do the C-section, or we're going to, do one after the other. And so what's the, what's happening there, and what's the impact of when we don't get the natural birth?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because yes, it's a really huge movement over the years has been to start, all over the world, to schedule cesareans, to just go to cesarean as the easy way. But I am really excited, and I'm how do I want to say this? I'm really hopeful. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. I'm seeing change all over the world. I'm seeing people starting to, in baby steps, but still every baby step over, the last 20 years that I've seen have made it to this place where now there's so much more understanding. And there's still a lot of places where cesareans are really common, and you're going to have, I've been to places where there are 95% cesarean rates in hospital, or 75%, or, whatever, really, really high. And I'm seeing people waking up, and I'm seeing things like, there's a huge study that was done a few years ago by the World Health Organization. They studied all of these cultures and all of these countries, and studied their statistics around cesarean and maternal and fetal outcomes. And what they came to was that if a country has above like 10 to 15% cesarean rate, their maternal mortality rate goes up. So they are having more intervention, more maternal and fetal negative outcomes, the higher the cesarean rate goes. So that actually caught the attention of a lot of places, and it's starting to have an impact. For example, in China, and I'm in China all the time. I'm there like about once a month right now. They are giving, there are some places where they're actually giving bonuses to doctors when they get their cesarean rates down. They're doing huge movements to try to reduce the cesarean rates. And because, actually China is statistically the highest in the world. I mean, we hear a lot about South America being high and places like that, and they are, but as a country as a whole, China is really high, like about around 50%. So, the World Health Organization is saying now you should be at 10 to 15%, cesarean rate. And so they're taking notice. And so they're looking for things that are going to help. And they are making changes. And I'm seeing these changes little by little, year by year. And one of my main purposes in really getting my voice out to as many people as possible is to say, you have so much more of a say than you think you do. All you have to do is ask. All you have to do is ask for things and know what to ask for and be educated. So I went off a little bit there on a tangent, but I think that what I want to really shout from the rooftops to people is, yes, there's a place for fighting for things, right? But if we can look at this industry and say things are getting better, and we can continue to focus on those positive things and continue to build bridges instead of walls with the medical community, we are making huge strides. I mean, look at Stanford University. I've done births at Stanford Hospital, and it is not my favorite place to do births. they have really, because it's a high risk facility. So they see all the worst things that can possibly happen, and they want to prevent them, right? So they do preventative medicine. And with birth, preventative medicine doesn't work the same way. You actually create more problems sometimes by intervening than not. But, you know, looking at them and looking at their pain studies and saying we are as a country, we are as a world making strides in the world of birth. And things are changing, and we have to be focusing on the good things, because the more we focus on those things, the more we build bridges with the nurses and the doctors, and we make friends with them, and we collaborate and we share our knowledge, the more we're going to see positive things happen in the birth world. And there are so many people in the doula community, in the birth community, who are so angry. And yes, they're right to be angry, because there's a lot of people having traumatic experiences out there. But if we focus on that anger, and we are living in that energy of anger, we're not going to make change in the birth world. We're going to continue to build walls instead of bridges.
Beautifully said. You know, and what I often think is anger certainly is a part of being alive. And when we experience anger, it is to say, hey, wait a minute, something's off. Something needs to be different. We need that to spark us into awareness, into action, and then take the action with love. And of course, all of what we're talking about becomes available with education, right? When people understand, oh wait, there's a choice. You mean I can ask for this? And it's so important that those of us who, you know, really are committed to the world going in a positive, light-filled direction are taking responsibility for our education, for our actions, for the vibe we are putting out into the world. You know, one of the things I talk about a lot with breath work is, just a really oversimplified way of saying it, is breath is the key to feeling. So when we are feeling something we don't want to feel, we automatically minimize our breath. And if we want to connect to feeling, which is, again, that's a lot of why we're here on earth, is to feel, then it's the breath that does it. And if we've had traumatic births, even ones that are not horrible births, it tends to give us an association to breath that says, well, do it as little as possible. So, you know, and we were talking before we got on the call about one of the things in society right now. Well, one you've already talked about in ways, and I'll just, you know, highlight the bridge there, is the world we're living in is so polarized right now. I mean, you know, even just between parties and ideologies, and one of the practices that I'm working on personally and sharing a lot about is when somebody comes with an idea or an ideology or perspective that's different than mine, that without education and training I might have felt angry about, and either pull myself away from them or, you know, polarize with them. The training is to say, I want to know more about that. Tell me why you feel so strongly. And as you said, you know, make connections there. And it seems to me that the work, you know, and you're having a big influence in one of the biggest parts of the world right now, China, that we often think of as being unenlightened and, factory oriented. And, so I'm with you. It's just so inspiring to hear the openness to your, not even openness, the demand for what you are bringing there. And I got to believe that on the collective consciousness level, that more and more people are saying, hey, this matters. And the way we arrive on the planet and opening up the feeling nature makes a difference in the collective.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And, where would you like to see it going? And, what do you think is possible for us in terms of birth and the impact on it's a big question, I know, but just if you were fantasizing with a magic wand in terms of what's possible, what could we hope for?
I think we can hope for, and we're seeing in many places in the world, a true collaboration of taking people who are really good at their individual things, doulas who are really good at helping to emotionally help women through this experience, helping them feel safe. Doctors who are really proficient in making sure that the woman and the baby are staying safe, and have the outcome that they want, but also have a safe outcome in general. Nurses who are so incredibly overworked. Nurses, I have to say, I have so much respect for them, because they work so hard, and but having them have that collaboration where they can do their job and they know the woman's being taken care of, and they can also be helping the woman get through this experience, having it be a true collaboration so that women have an opportunity to not be in fear the whole time that they're in labor, to not be to feel victimized, to be able to really tap into the breath. And what you were talking about with breath is such a huge conversation with birth, because you can just say, oh, just breathe to somebody. But, when you're in fear, when you're in that fight or flight, the breath is the first thing that is going to get stopped. They might be taking a deep breath, but they're holding everything really tight while they do, and it's not going to be doing what it needs to do. And the cascade that happens when you don't breathe, anatomically, as well as emotionally and and physically, the diaphragm connected to the psoas, which sits right behind the baby, which is going to influence the position of the baby, the baby's ability to get down into the pelvis in general. All of these things with breath is pivotal. It's really key in being able to have an amazing ecstatic experience. So what I see in the future, getting back to your question about birth, is this amazing collaboration where we're all coming together and figuring out from different perspectives, what can we bring to make this a full experience for women, and to really support them and have them feel safe in this experience. As well, really importantly, educating women and families, not just women, about preparation for birth. And this can begin even before they get pregnant. Teaching them about how to prepare their bodies, teaching them about how to get ready for the experience of motherhood and fatherhood emotionally, so that you can have the other, so you can have a successful practice when you do get pregnant, so that you can utilize techniques like breath work, like yoga, like relaxation, meditation, hypnosis, whatever you want to call it, and physically, so you can feel safe to get a strong body, to be able to physically be able to handle what the enormous demands. And then as well, this will set people up for having recoveries that are much more enjoyable I mean, you know, you just had a baby, and there are so many people who are suffering after they had a baby. They're suffering because they're in pain from the birth, they're in trauma from the birth, they've had a cesarean, they've had major surgery, they've have a new baby at home, and they don't know what to do, and they are having this huge switch of hormones, and they don't have all of that built up oxytocin and endorphins and beta endorphin high for 2 weeks that they can just live on, you know. And so the postpartum being a really pivotal part of this whole big picture in trying to help, I feel like if we can set up from the beginning people to have all of those things, then the postpartum time is going to be one where it is enjoyable, it's ecstatic, it's a time where you can connect with your baby. You know, China has it right in that giving them a month after they have a baby. It's just, what do you do with that month, right? So I have a lot of thought about that, but that's where I see things. That's where I dream, that the people will have the support that they need, that they'll feel supported and strong and empowered and connected.
Beautiful. That's great. You know, I'll add in something into our tapestry and see how it see how that fabric feels to you. In that, so you know, when we're talking right now, we're in this, again, political world climate of such polarization, and we're, you know, in a geological and climatological crisis as well. So we've got political factions fighting against each other. We've got humans, you know, sinking the planet down in some way. We've got social media in some ways potentially disconnecting us, and you know, a lot of people are in anxiety and fear about that, and which is of course totally understandable. And I look at all of that and I'm hopeful also. And I think, well, this is, you know, sometimes it has to get more painful before we take action, before we say, all right, enough is enough. Sometimes it has to get a little darker before more of us stand up and say, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for on planet Earth. Right. And, you know, and one aspect of it that a lot of us have been talking about is that perhaps this is a bit extreme of saying it this way, but the reign of terror of patriarchal leadership, you know, needs to come to a change. And, you know, whether that means a man or a woman in leadership, that we need more of the feminine aspect of us online, more of the aspect of all of us that embraces life as a priority rather than some kind of domination of others or domination of the environment. So my hope tying into this, and, you know, part of why I'm such a fan of what you're doing and so appreciative of it, is that with every woman that becomes empowered, with every birth that is more natural and beautiful and healthy, that is strengthening our collective embracing of the feminine, and thereby of connection and of life itself. And, you know, and to get to our common roots in yoga in some way, the underlying component of yoga, of course, is that it's all about oneness and remembering the spiritual truth of who we are, which is infinitely and always connected. So, you know, my hope is that this crazy, tumultuous time we're in is leading to more and more of what you're helping spark, which is bringing us all back together.
Yeah, that is definitely the hope. Absolutely. Yeah, and I hold that. And I mean, I feel like in order to be doing this work and on this planet right now, you have to hold that. That has to, you know, we're not going to create a change by remaining only in the energy of fear and separation. And, you know, we're realizing how separated we actually are, I think, right now, and how do we bring that together? And I think that, yes, embracing the feminine is amazing and great, but it's also, again, there is this separation thing, right? If you're going all in one direction and not in both, I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say. There's so many people in this birth world who are like all about the feminine. It's all it's about women and the feminine, and it is for sure. It's birth. It is that, but it's also about this coming together and bringing in both energies, bringing in the masculine and the feminine, and when they're in balance, that is the energy that we are looking for, right? Yes, and in order for them to be in balance, we need to bring feminine in, right? More, but not so that it becomes a matriarch, so that it becomes something that is balanced. And how beautiful that energy is when you have it, when it's not one or the other.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's passion. That's aliveness. That's the energy. I mean, that's polarity in the positive sense, right? When there's a strong masculine and a wise feminine, and they come together, attracted in that polarity, bringing the best of both. That it has this incredible magic that can create another being. So yeah, it's creating the balance and the appreciation of all of those aspects of ourselves and in the world. Beautifully said. Yeah. Awesome. Well, so I think one part and one of the reasons why we're doing this is to help spread the word and get more education out there. So last two questions for me. What one, how can people learn more about you and what you're doing and get involved? And otherwise, what can people be doing on their own that's helping this important knowledge spread and the work you're doing?
So I am really focused right now in China and in Asia, but I am kind of, in sometimes doing English speaking trainings. I'm doing mostly prenatal yoga trainings, starting to do more doula trainings, but again, they're in China. So it's for people who speak Chinese or who are in China, or even if they don't, because I do my trainings in English and I have a translator. That's a way to find me. I also have a book coming out December 4th, and that is 10 ways to reduce your chance of having a cesarean. And it's really about the positive things that you can do. And then if you do end up having a cesarean, that that you've done everything that you can do and that you feel really good about it. And so there are aspects of a lot of the things that we've talked about in that, and a lot of resources. It's kind of an interesting model. I wanted to make it a short enough book that would be really readable, and so I'm making it. There are links on. I have a website that goes with it, and so you can. If you have a question about anything, you can go to that chapter on the website, and you can get more information and links to other things, so that it could be really readable and still have as many resources as possible. So I'm excited about that. The Dolphin Method is my methodology. It encompasses all of my work, not just the yoga, but the doula and the hypnosis. And so that's thedolphinmethod.com. And yeah, that's kind of how to reach me. And what else did you ask just now?
Well, that's all good. And do you have still have a DVD that's available for
I do. I have
yeah.
It's pretty old at this point, but it definitely still is. It's a prenatal yoga DVD. I have a couple of them out. I also have postnatal out, and the postnatal one is really great because it's got a really short one. So right after you have the baby, you can do 5 or 10 minutes. And it's really about healing the space that's left after you have a baby. Because after you have a baby, you know, all this love went into your abdomen, and everyone is, you know, throwing love into your abdomen all the time. And then you have the baby, and that area of your body becomes something ugly, something you don't want to, you know, that you want to get rid of. And so it's about filling that back up. And that's kind of the first yoga practice, coming back after having a baby. And then, you know, as well as a few movements. So that's in the postnatal DVD as well.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. And then I guess the last little piece then is, if there's anything that comes to you for folks who, you know, aren't going to be giving birth, or aren't going to be a doula or working with women directly, is there anything that the rest of us can be doing that's sort of helping this for all of us?
I think that helping birth world in general for all of us?
Just, you know, helping us as a collective improve our relationship with birth and foster more healthy birth. I mean, certainly, I think having the knowledge and being able to share, and perhaps sometimes at a dinner say, oh, well, hold on, maybe there's another perspective on your birth coming up, right? You know,
right.
That kind of thing. Is that right? Or is there anything else you think that might fit?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we start to think about birth differently. Right now, when you hear people talk about birth, especially if they haven't been involved in it, all we hear is it's the most pain you're ever going to have in your life, you know, and a lot of different things that come along with that. And so, you know, I think we need to start looking at birth in a different way. And even people who are never going to have a baby, but to see it as something that has the potential to be transformational, to be beautiful, and start to talk about that instead of only talking about the negative and the pain and how awful it is. And I'm so glad I'm not a woman, you know, but because it does have that potential. And until we start as collectively embracing that idea, we are not going to be able to really have that be a reality. Can I just say one more thing?
Please.
This is just a story I always tell about menopause, because this is something, you know, it's not birth related, but, you know, we have this idea that menopause is supposed to be like the loss of your being, the loss of your femininity, which, you know, is your place in the world as a woman, is gone once you go into menopause. And so in our culture, we have so many issues around menopause. People get hot flashes. They have, you know, hormone issues. They are, you know, it's this really hard transition for a lot of people over many years. And I don't think that really the average person knows how intense menopause is for women, and how, you know, life altering it is. There's a tribe in Africa, the Kung, and they, the women have no negative symptoms of menopause, none. They will and the reason is, and one of the things about this tribe is that when a woman goes through menopause, when she stops getting her period, she becomes honored. She becomes an elder who is respected and cherished. And so it's this idea of, when you get to this place, this is going to be such a great thing. I get to be this person who's honored in my tribe, who's respected, who's an elder, who, you know, and so they don't have negative impacts of, you know, physical negative impacts. They might still have the hot flashes, they might still have those things, but they're not registering them as negative. They're all positive because it's leading to this positive outcome. And we have such a negative thought process of women when they get into this stage of life, when they lose their period, you know, they lose their femininity. And, you know, so one of the things that I feel like we can start doing collectively is to take a page out of the Kung tribe and start to see that time as a time that is really creative. There's this like there's a lot of anatomy that goes along with it, but there's this creation hormone that happens when you're ovulating that is on full time after you have your menstruation. So you are in such a creative time in your life. It has the potential to really be a beautiful time for women. And so something else that we can do as a culture is to see birth, to see menstruation, to see pregnancy and postpartum, to see menopause as really positive times in a person's life that can be beautiful and joyful, not just pregnancy. And if we can start to acknowledge that as people, then it makes the experience as being a woman on this earth much more ecstatic.
Mm. Well, you know, there's that cliche sort of trite saying, happy wife, happy life. So as a culture, that, you know, the more the women are happy in the world, the better for all of us. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I'm happy to hear that, and I know a lot of our viewers will take a breath of fresh air when they get that perspective. You know, it's so much about our expectations and how we see the world. So I'm glad you added that in. Awesome.
Great.
Well, Jen, it's been such a pleasure to get to connect with you and talk about this stuff that's fun and important. And I'm so grateful for your passion and the work you're doing for all of us out there. So thanks for hanging.
Thank you. And you too. Thanks for giving me this platform to talk about my passion.
Yeah. So the dolphinmethod.com is, you know, the way to reach Jen. And I'm Daniel Aaron, and this has been The Art of Vibrant Living. You can find me at danielaaron.com. And with that, thanks for watching, listening, and being part of the solution, y'all. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.